That didn't work. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Real Hawk Talk. I am Brian Nemhauser. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at HawkBlogger, and we have a fun show tonight. We're gonna be catching up with Jeff Simmons, and here he is getting all squared away after a unfortunate softball loss this evening. But glad to have him here. We're not going to talk about the Mariners because the Mariners absolutely blew it today. Of course, the umpire was terrible, but we won't talk about that. We're going to talk about the Seahawks. We got stuff to catch up on. Jeff, at Real Jeff Simmons on Twitter. Jeff, what's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I've been traveling a lot this week. I've been unable to do my usual crazy Seahawks content stuff, but it's always nice to come back and talk some ball with you during this dead zone.
Well, I mean, it is absolutely a dead zone, Jeff. The biggest story I think this week has been Bill Belichick dating a 24-year-old. I mean, my timeline is filled up with pictures and videos of Bill Belichick leaving his girlfriend's house at odd hours, and I couldn't be less interested than whether whoever Bill Belichick's dating is whatever. I don't really care. So we're not gonna talk about that. But I do want to talk about a couple things. We've got some Patron questions to get to and some good ones at that. I want to talk about. I mentioned this yesterday on Hawkblogger Mornings, but the Brandon Aiyuk news, and I wanted to get your take on what your expectations are of what's going on there. If you didn't catch what's going on, he had shared out on Instagram a video of him talking with Jaden Daniels, and he was saying, hey, they don't want me, basically implying that the 49ers do not want Brandon Aiyuk back. And that started a whole bunch of conversations about, well, it's interesting that he's doing this with Jaden Daniels, who he's got history with. Does this mean the Commanders might trade for him? Are the Commanders going to potentially trade Terry McLaurin for Brandon Aiyuk? All these different things. Then there's conversation. Well, maybe the latest thing I saw are the Browns going to trade Amari Cooper for Brandon Aiyuk. I'm curious. There's a couple other pieces to this, but I'm curious if you saw that kind of thing jump out and what your reactions were to that story.
Yeah, the Aiyuk thing's very interesting because San Francisco has been on this weird thing where they're trying to either keep Aiyuk or keep Debo. They drafted Ricky Pearsall, so they're going to have to get rid of one of them. And then the story comes out with Jaden Daniels, who was Aiyuk's teammate in college. And it's crazy that they went back that far when he was at Arizona State. But yeah, I saw the McLaurin thing. I don't see that at all. I don't see Washington, they're bringing along a rookie quarterback. McLaurin is one of the more quarterback-friendly players. He's one of the best route runners, like consummate professional. I can't see Dan Quinn getting rid of that guy in the building to pay Brandon Aiyuk $30 million. And Cooper, it's kind of the same thing. Cooper's issue right now with the Browns is that he wants more money. So he's probably not going to get as much as Aiyuk did, but I think it's pretty clear that San Francisco has botched this whole thing. I know our buddy David Lombardi would disagree with that. He'd probably say that they've played this perfectly, but you can look at all the receivers that got paid, Michael Pittman and all these guys, Devonta Smith. You never want to be, and Evan talks about this all the time, it's Derek, you never want to be the team that pays the guy last. You want to pay before and kind of set the market. And that position is completely blown up. And then Jefferson blew it out of the water, and CeeDee Lamb still has to get paid. So by waiting and trying to, and Aiyuk, rightfully so, deserves a lot of money. He is a very good player. So I'm hoping this gets worse for the Niners. I'm hoping this continues to skyrocket because I thought they'd sign him and kind of let Debo go. Because Debo's getting a little older. He's injury prone. He's a very unique player. He's more of a weapon than like a receiver. He's more like a running back with the ball in his hands. But I've wondered if Aiyuk's going to price himself out of there. And as that market continues to go up, and we're going to see this with DK next year. We talked about this already. But I think it's pretty clear San Francisco has botched this. And it's weird because usually when teams trade a guy, they trade them for draft picks. they're in a window to win right now before they have to pay Purdy. And ultimately, they're going to need cheaper players down the road, which will help that next iteration. They're going to pay Purdy probably $60 million. So they're in a really tough spot here. And I don't think they're going to get the kind of trades. I don't think there's going to be a lot of excitement to trade for Aiyuk and pay him $30 million. So I see why these player-for-player options have floated around, but I don't see them from the other team's side.
Yeah, I mean, I think the reason that they're floated around, and I'm seeing them primarily from like Grant Cohen, is that his reasoning is the Niners are in a championship window now, and so they don't want draft picks. They're going to want to get a player right now that can help them contend. And in that regard, I think that does make some sense. I don't think it's the right long-term move for a team to do that, but the 49ers are trying to capitalize now. I can totally see Terry McLaurin is not the same receiver that Brandon Aiyuk is, but he is a good receiver. He's a very good receiver. And if you could get him back, you're probably not losing a ton relative to Brandon Aiyuk. And you're getting him for cheaper, and you've got him through 2025. So there's some logic to it. But to your point, I'm not convinced the other team's going to want to do that anyway. So I'm curious, like, Jeff, how do you think that this ends up resolving itself? Is this something where you think it's going to drag into the season with Aiyuk holding out? Do you think that the 49ers end up caving and giving him the long-term deal? Do you think that they trade him?
I think they're going to cave. I think ultimately they're going to cave. But maybe I'm reading that wrong. A lot of their negotiations have kind of been like this, where like Bosa held out for a while last year, and I think they're going to end up paying him what he wants. I think if they get to camp, and Aiyuk is such a good route runner, and it's going to be hard to run the offense they want without him in the lineup. And I hope it kind of gets to the point where they do trade him. I would love to see Aiyuk play for another team. He's a guy that's just really hard to defend. His kind of route running in Shanahan's offense is a really scary weapon. But I think their history, I would guess that they're going to ultimately cave and pay him, and this will be framed as, oh, it's a huge win for the Niners. But I don't think there's any scenario where it's a huge win for the Niners. I think they're going to ultimately pay him at the top of the market when they could have paid him probably a lot less if they'd done this earlier and got ahead of this. And now that I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'm hoping I'm wrong, and I'm hoping this gets ugly and this goes into the season and he skips 8 games and the record's not very good. But I don't know. My guess is they pay him.
All right, Jeff, I'm going to read you some names, and I want you to tell me if you knew that Brandon Aiyuk was going to be gone. Okay? If he's traded, he's not in the 49ers, and you're the 49ers. Which of these players would you personally, as a Seahawks fan, be most concerned with being a 49er? Okay, I'm just going to read a couple of names. You ready? All right. Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk, or Adonai Mitchell. Which of those players would you least want to be on the 49ers?
Ooh. Go through those again.
Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Keon Coleman, Ladd McConkey, Jalen Polk, and Adonai Mitchell.
Ladd McConkey. That really scared me around the draft. He in that offense, he could have been just like the natural fit for Aiyuk. I thought he was, their skill sets are kind of similar. Aiyuk's a better version, but that kind of route runner in that offense would have scared me. The other guys are more project. Even Pearsall is more of a project kind of receiver. And even Aiyuk, who's a really polished player, it took him a while to kind of learn the Shanahan offense. So if they want to bring along rookies, I'm all for it. But yeah, I think McConkey, the Shanahan offense is so precise with the way they just do things, and having a route runner like that would make me really nervous.
That is exactly why I asked, because I wanted to see. I mean, I listed those names. I was a big Ricky Pearsall guy. We talked about it. I've been a fan. I like him. So it's not that I think he's a bad player. He's an excellent athlete, but he's probably third for me on that list of guys that I would be concerned with the 49ers having, at least for this year. And Ladd McConkey, I think, is going to be a significantly better player, at least for the first year, maybe for the first few years. And I thought he was a custom fit for what the 49ers needed and would benefit from. And I was worried that they were going to draft him. And so when they drafted Pearsall, I mean, Pearsall has the athletic ceiling to be really, really good, but I just think McConkey is a very polished player. And if you've heard anything about the reports so far coming out of the Chargers camp, they feel like they got one. They feel like they got like a guy in McConkey, and that's not surprising to me. I also think Keon Coleman's a guy that might end up becoming one of the guys that they wish they would have drafted. And so part of the reason I'm bringing this up is because they had a chance. They took a receiver in that first round. There's a lot of guys that they could have selected. And not only is this going to be a thing, Jeff, where they've got to figure out what happens with Aiyuk and they might lose him, but they also then might get the additional gut punch of watching receivers they could have drafted explode while their guy is slow to get off the ground.
It's going to be really interesting. Everyone's going to be looking at that run of receivers. And yeah, you're right. Pearsall was a guy that me and you thought was like a we thought he was a second round player.
Yeah.
And we both liked him. And we're not saying like we don't think he's going to be good, but just like with the Niners, they've had very specific skill sets. And his skill set isn't the one that would scare me. As I think he could be a very good player for them, but Coleman with like Josh Allen, like that makes a ton of sense. Like they just match so well. I thought with Purdy, McConkey was the guy that would have really scared me. And Pearsall has the ability to make incredible catches. He made one of probably the nicest catch in college football last year. But the guys like the Julian Edelmans, the Doug Baldwins, those are the guys that are just impossible to cover. And that's kind of what Aiyuk is. Aiyuk is such a good route runner. He's so hard to cover. And if they want to move that to a guy who's not like that, and they could have had McConkey. So I hope this blows up in their face, and I hope they're just looking at that draft class like, what did we do here?
Yeah. I'm the same way. Another thing that I was debating about whether to bring up, I'm going to go ahead and do it. Well, let's do this after patron questions. Let's take some patron questions, and if we have time, we'll take on this other piece as well. If people haven't already, please join at patreon.com/hawkblogger. Gets you access to the Slack channel, gets you all the audio of the pod and the Hawkblogger Mornings pods, all those other pods, and also get to ask us questions every week. I do want to welcome a new member, Detail Oriented. I love it. We've got him as a new suite level member on YouTube and a Patreon member. So it's fantastic to have that kind of support. Really, really appreciate it. Thank you. Please consider joining as well. Would love to keep the crew growing. First question, Jeff. All right. This comes from Troy Fagan.
What's up, Troy?
Now that we're in the dog days of the NFL offseason, and man, are we, dude? We really are. And I thank God rookies report July 17th because it's less than a month. We can make it, dude. Anyway, so in the dog days of the NFL offseason, and you start to think about training camp and the preseason, what are your thoughts on the proposed scrapping of the spring programs and possible institution of an extended training camp? Does that make you for a better product in the end, since there's more continuous time on task, more time to get players into shape, especially considering the NFL will go to an 18-game season with 2 or maybe 0 preseason games?
I don't think it might have that effect. And I think the issue right now is not the timing of everything. It's that the Players Association really puts stamps on the amount they're going to practice. Everyone's heard the term two-a-days. They used to practice at a significantly higher level. And I don't think changing the schedule will have that significant of an impact personally. I think they're still trending in a way where there's going to be less preseason games. Eventually, it's probably going to go to 18 regular season games and 2 preseason games. And that's probably going to lead to still sloppy products at the beginning of the year. There's not really a development league, so you can't really get your hands on the players until like April every year. So offensive linemen, there's a little there's a lot of times at the end of the year, the offensive lines are not playing very well, and it leads to an ugly product. So a lot of the players have come out and actually fought back against that, and they said that most people are going to say that actually that schedule is going to be worse because it's just too much time playing football. They need, and one of the biggest things is that people who work in the league just for like mental health stuff, they have sort of this summer break to spend time with their families, and it coincides with when their kids are out of school. So I know Daniel Jeremiah said people in the league are going to go crazy if this happens. Because if you know anything about football people, they work like insane hours. Like Schneider and his staff, apparently during the draft, and this has been talked about. Like they work like 80-hour weeks. So I think this giving them that break is good for like their headspace. But again, in terms of the product, I don't think it would have a significant impact. Maybe I'm misreading it, but I think unless they get to the point where they're practicing at the levels they used to, and they've seen what happened with concussions and all that kind of stuff. So that's the downside there. But if they're going to have less preseason games, and now that teams have kind of gone away from the preseason, Sean McVay sort of started that trend where they don't even take it seriously anymore. I don't think the change of the schedule will have a significant change. Do you have any feelings different on that, or?
No, I've kind of watched the conversation about it, and I don't have a strong take. I mean,
Yeah.
generally it feels like sticking with what they have is the better way to go, unless there is a real clear step forward and doing it another way. I understand what Troy's getting at in terms of getting some more time together, but as far as I'm concerned, it's less about contiguous time and it's more about the way that practice rules have changed and the lack of, you can't have 2-a-days, you can't have that many padded practices. I think that has a lot more impact on preparation than how much continuous practice time you get. But that's just my mild take on that one. All right. Next question comes from Colin, and he says, Brian, is JSN a natural replacement for Tyler, or should we be looking in the draft next year for a wide receiver early that's more his flavor, over the top burner in younger years? Well, I mean, I think that JSN is more classically qualified to be a slot receiver. I think that's where he's at his best. I have a feeling that he is going to get more chances this year outside, and I do think his skill set is more than good enough to play outside. He doesn't have to be a burner type. He made some plays down the field last year. And if you think about like Darrell Jackson as a former receiver, right? Like he wasn't a burner, but he was a guy that was like really a safety net for Matt Hasselbeck in those early years, a guy that he just knew was going to be in the place that he needed him to be and be open. And I think that JSN has every reason to believe that he's going to be better than Darrell Jackson. So I do think that JSN could emerge to be that alternate receiver. And then it gives you opportunity in the draft to either draft, if a receiver falls to you that is like a great outside receiver, fantastic, JSN can still play slot, or you can actually draft a slot receiver later and have JSN play outside and have positional flexibility. So yeah, I think either or is fine. It's part of why I was interested in I think it was I want to say Anthony Gould from Oregon State this year. I thought he would have been a sneaky good addition. I thought Malik Washington would have been a sneaky good addition, but drafting someone later that can potentially allow you to see if you have the next receiver in line. I don't necessarily believe Jake Bobo is a starting receiver in the NFL. I think he's a really good fourth receiver, but I think if he's one of your top three receivers, I think you're in trouble. And that's not meaning to be mean to him. I think he's got limitations. All right, Jeff. Hawks fan Matt Man asks, taking all relevant factors into consideration, age, talent, injuries, contract, team fit, which current starting NFL quarterbacks would you take over Geno right now? Well, I think we'll have to both do this. Is going to take a little while.
Yeah, I'm going to have to. Should we go division by division?
Let me pull up quarterback rankings in the NFL. We'll pull up PFF's quarterback rankings, and I'll show this to you so you can decide which of these it'll bias you a little bit, but I think it's okay. I think we can answer this independent of what they have as their rankings. All right, Jeff. Can you see that? Is that big enough for you? Should I make it bigger?
Yeah, I can see it.
All right. So Mahomes, Jackson, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Dak Prescott, Stafford, Rodgers, Hertz.
Rodgers is that high?
Yeah, Stroud. And this is where you get to just like maybe the easiest thing would be, which of these players would you have below? If I cross a player, you'd have below Geno Smith. Speak up. I will do the same. All right. So I don't think we're there yet. I
see something going in your head there for Dak.
I'm a little bit on question mark with Dak Prescott. I am, and it's not like, oh, Geno's better than Dak. I do have some questions. Dak has had a very different situation to play quarterback in the past few years. If Geno crashes and burns this year with the situation, assuming a big assumption that the offensive line play is better and Ryan Grubb calls a better offense, then I'll have more questions about Geno. But I just think he's been in a very crap situation for a couple of years. Anyway, Stafford. No, what do you think about Rodgers? Is Rodgers above Geno for you?
I don't think so, which is weird considering he's like a first ballot Hall of Famer, but it's like a 41-year-old guy coming off a torn Achilles in a team he's really never played on. We don't know if it's like, the first line right there is perfect. Who knows what Rodgers will look like in 2024? Like, he is a complete wild card. I think we have a pretty good idea of Geno's floor at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, he's a guy that you realistically could have play quarterback for you for the next 3 years. And I don't know that that's the case with Aaron Rodgers. Hertz is an interesting one. What's your thought there?
I think Geno, like as a pure quarterback, is definitely a better like quarterback than Hertz. Hertz's best skill is his movement and what he can do in the run game. And when that got taken away this year, and we saw it like even against that terrible Seahawks defense, and Hertz was pretty sick in that game. But when they kind of fell off a cliff, he didn't look very effective. So I'm wait and see on Hertz. I'm not the biggest fan because I think over time those kind of players tend to get exposed.
That's what I thought happened to him last year.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a big Jaylen Herz fan. I was a big Jaylen Herz fan before he became particularly good in the NFL, I think he got exposed a little bit last year. I'm not sure his star is still rising. He will either recover this year and be great, or he won't be starting in 2 years. I think that's possible.
Yeah. The thing with him is, I thought he was going to be terrible in the NFL.
Yeah,
I did.
We had these conversations.
I'll to his credit and to your credit.
Yeah,
I was shocked by the improvement he made going from year 2 to year 3. And that there's a playoff game they had before they got AJ Brown against Tampa Bay, and he looked like he couldn't play at all.
Yeah,
and then the next year he should have won the Super Bowl. So this is a huge year for him with the new coordinator coming in, and we're not going to spend too much time on this. Well, Stroud is clearly.
Yeah. I think the Hertz one's a fair question. Jordan Love, I definitely would rather have Jordan Love. He won me over last year. His play against the 49ers in the playoffs was really impressive. Trevor Lawrence, age-wise for sure.
Yeah.
Contract-wise,
would
you really like? I gotta say, I mean, this is not going to be a popular opinion. I think I'd rather have Geno Smith on the contract he's on for the next 3 years than Trevor Lawrence on the contract that he's on. I think that's true. Over the next 10 years, then it's Trevor Lawrence. But even then, I have some questions about this guy. Like he gets the he's kind of the anti-Geno, Jeff, because of his draft pedigree.
He really
People just
is.
kind of like, they just excuse a lot of stuff for him, where I'm like, he's actually been kind of mediocre to below average in a lot of his games.
Yeah, the write-ups in here are great because that's exactly what it is. He shows flashes where he looks like the best, like what he was hailed as a super quarterback prospect. You see flashes of it, but a lot of the other time, his play has been, he's living more off hype. If you just like purely watch his film and considered him like a 5th round pick, he wouldn't even be that impressive. He's been more down than up in his career. And like you could excuse him for the rookie year, but last year, after his best year, people thought he was really going to take that jump. He didn't do it for me. He looked like he struggled. So I'm that contract at $55 million a year that would make my stomach turn.
Yeah. We can keep going through this.
Yeah, we're gonna end up in a totally different conversation here. If we keep...
I think where I get on this, Jeff, is a different
like...
thing than quarterback rankings. Where I get is, who are the quarterbacks that are starting in the NFL that are not capable of winning a Super Bowl? Because that's really the line.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, yes, if your quarterback is the 10th best instead of the 15th best, you have to have less talent elsewhere to win a Super Bowl. But it doesn't mean you're incapable of winning it with the 15th best. I think there are more quarterbacks in the NFL now that I think are Super Bowl capable than almost any other time in NFL history.
Yeah, well, 17 I don't think is. I don't.
I wouldn't want to bet on him winning a Super Bowl now.
He reminds me of like Russell Westbrook, like as a player. Like he'll do the fun stuff. He's exciting. He's a high pick. He's flashy. Josh Cashman thinks he's awesome, but can you really see him winning 3 playoff games? Like the one time he made the playoffs, like completely shot himself.
Yeah, I am Josh Cashman. If you're listening, until he proves me otherwise, I will not be on the Kyler Murray bandwagon. I see this as a guy that shows every sign of somebody who will not rise to the occasion. He will shrink. And I don't mean that as a short joke. I just think he's not that guy in those moments. And this is knowing the fact that he was, a multi-time state champion in Texas and obviously had a lot of success in college. I really question the decisions he makes when the games are really on the line. And he's not a guy. He's right on the border. Like, is it possible for him to win a Super Bowl? Maybe, but I think he's closer to Jay Cutler than he is to, Trent Dilfer, like somebody who could be lifted by the players around him. So I don't know, Jeff, like, I don't think Baker Mayfield can win a Super Bowl.
No.
I don't think Derek Carr can.
No. Derek Carr is the line of like, he's just become like the definition of like the average guy with no upside.
Based on where Deshaun Watson was last year, no, but he was someone before that. Russell Wilson has won one, but based on where he is now, I don't think so. Anthony Richardson is flying. I saw him. Field Yates had him as number 3 on his fantasy football quarterback ranking. I'm not a fantasy football guy, but that was wild to me. Anthony Richardson is a big wild card this year. Some people just think he is going to blow up. I don't know. I mean, these are all guys that we're getting to now. Like Daniel Jones will never win one. So that's kind of the thing for me, I guess, Jeff. I guess I draw the line right around Geno.
Yeah, because if Jared Goff made the Super Bowl last year, it would have been interesting to see if that limitation would have held up, because he's just in like the ultimate situation. I would have never had him as a guy I think could win, but like I don't think Tua could. I know. I think he could. I don't think Tua could.
I don't think Tua. I paused there because I'm not a believer in Tua.
Who was under Tua? There was another guy under him who I don't think could either.
Cousins.
Goff? Cousins. I don't think Cousins could.
Really? Cousins was damn good against the 49ers last
He
year before
was,
he
but
got hurt.
he
That was
just
an impressive game.
that was the best game I've ever seen him play. And that was an outlier. He's had struggles against good teams, and he's played really poorly in like big games historically. So that was a game where, yeah, he looked different. But
Yeah, I'm not convinced Rodgers can win a Super Bowl now.
he just
Even when
seems
he
like
was good a few years ago, he was pretty bad in the playoffs.
oh no,
And
yeah.
they've been knocked out a lot. Prescott, I think can, but he's been pretty unsuccessful in the playoffs.
Well, he's a guy
Unsuccessful in big games.
He beats up on weak teams historically. Like they've had a kind of a weak division. He'll always crush like the Giants, and then he can beat up on like whatever last year's Seahawks defense was. But when he plays against good teams like San Francisco, he has shrunk and he has not played well. And I don't think he's had one playoff game where he's played particularly well. So that's with a really good roster.
Yeah. It's kind of a there's a lot of things I can look at where I could say Geno is in the top 7, depending on what kind of quarterback you're looking at, what kind of capability. There's a lot where you could say Geno's 15 to 20, like bottom half of the rank. Like I totally see all that, but I think where I end up getting to is he one of the guys that if he was given enough talent around him, could he win? I think he can. I totally understand why a lot of other people would say no, he can't, because he has not yet had the game where he has gone up against a really great team and lifted his team up. I thought the first playoff game against San Francisco, first 3 quarters of that game, he was showing that capability, but that was such a massive mismatch, dude. Like they couldn't. It was like trying to walk through dry brush covered in flames and not set a fire. Like, I mean, like it was such a mismatch. But he hasn't proven it yet. So like I get why people might not agree with that. All right, great question, Matt. Next question. Derek Woods asks, if the news were to come out that one Seahawk is extended right before or early in camp, which player do you think it is? Which player would you hope it is?
It's a tricky question because the Seahawks have a roster that there's not a lot of extension candidates. They have a lot of guys on rookie deals who can't be extended, and the only real ones are Geno, DK, Trey Brown. I don't. Am I missing anyone? It might be just those 3 are the only options.
For extensions, DK, Geno, Julian Love.
Yeah. I guess that's the other one.
I think that's probably it.
So they're in a weird roster situation where the next year is where you're going to see a lot of new contracts they're going to have to start looking at what to do with Woolen and Cross, but we're still a couple years away from that. So I don't think there is one. I guess DK would be the only one, but I'm in big wait and see mode with him. I want to see if he can take a step forward. I think paying him would be a mistake.
There was a interview with Hugh Millen on Chuck Powell and Bucky Jacobson's show at some point in last week. And he was talking about DK Metcalf, and anyone that knows Hugh Millen knows how much he loves DK Metcalf. And Hugh, as typical with him, came with all these numbers. And one of the things he came that I thought was interesting is he talked about how much DK Metcalf has been double teamed and how much that affects other parts of the team. And that one of the things that Ryan Grubb was able to do in University of Washington is create opportunities for Omadunze to get single coverage. And we've heard, what have we heard, Jeff, from, all so far in the offseason is motion. All the receivers are being asked to learn all the positions. They're going to have to play different places, and that you won't know who's going to be where. That's the first time that's ever happened. And so if you're going to get DK Metcalf in this situation where he finally, potentially, a defense is not going to be able to know exactly where he's going to be on every play, and if they want to put a safety over the top, they'll be able to double him reliably every time. Now he'll be moved around, and maybe he'll get some opportunities to be 150 target player instead of a 120 target player. And that becomes more interesting.
I think for sure coaching and player utilization, but for DK for me to be comfortable with an extension, I need to see him get better at a few things. And one of them is just contested catches. One of them is red zone. And if we could combine just he's such a physical impact, it's hard. You really don't want to take him off your team, just what he does for the coverages. But for me to think him as that $30 million player, I need to see him get better at some of the technical sides of the game. And I think the coaching could have a huge impact on him. But for me, if you watch AJ Brown, who's kind of his counterpart, he's really good at the point of attack. And he's not as fast as DK, but he's just really good at the little things. I think that's where DK can really take a step forward. And I think they have the right coaching staff to utilize him well, but I want to see him get better at those kind of plays.
Yeah. Agreed. Huge year. It's going to be fun to watch how that plays out for DK. All right. Next question comes from Imani Waddell. If possible, he wants each guest to share their choice. So that's all of us. You get one free agent on the current market to bring in using the budget created from the Draymond Jones restructure. Who do you take? Would you like me to give you some free agent choices?
Yeah, I was going to say it's probably. Yeah, sure.
Do you have a specific position that you'd like to hear about?
Linebacker?
Yeah, well, I can tell you linebacker pretty easily. Linebacker is going to be guys like Zach Cunningham, Shaquille Leonard. What's the other guy's name? Quan Alexander.
Ugh.
Yeah, I mean those are the Anthony Barr. Tanner Muse. It's a short list, dude, of free agents, linebackers.
Yeah, I'm looking at
David Bakhtiari.
70.
Did you hear he went on? He feels like he's gonna play another couple of years.
Yeah, just where do you play him?
I don't know, man.
Is he your backup left tackle?
Yeah, I mean, he's better than Charles Cross. I'm sorry.
Oh,
he's better. Oh. He's better than him, even if he's hurt. Hopefully I'm wrong.
Well, it's just I'm going through the list right now.
What about Jamal Adams?
No, I'm not.
I can't get you to say Jamal Adams.
No, man. We're talking Mike McDonald's whole linebacker plays based on coverage. Jamal can't really cover. And last year I was just, listen, I hope he lands on his feet, but I'm just done with this guy. I don't want to. I'm looking at some of the other guys. Stephon Gilmore, would be interesting.
What about Yannick Ngakoue?
They just have so many bodies there. It's
they
do you really want a 30-year-old who's our boy Ryan Neal's a free agent still. Everyone told me how good he was, and I was being a jerk.
What about Glowinski?
That's a guy I could convince myself into. It's pretty barren out there.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Stephon Gilmore is if they sign him, it's okay, he could compete for outside corner with Trey Brown. But that'd be cool. But do they really need to do that?
What about Rasheem Green? Bring him home.
Let me find Shaq Leonard is just a shell of himself at this point. It's sad. He was on a Hall of Fame track. Al Woods is still a free agent, but no.
He is. I don't think there's a guy for me, man. I really don't.
No, I think it's pretty barren out there. These are the guys.
It's pretty barren. Yeah. So a bit of a cop out, Amani, but I don't know that. I mean, I think for me, I'd probably say Jamal Adams if you can get him. I think that that's probably the best opportunity to find something of potential value out there. All right. Next question comes from More Bobo. If you could choose one player, past or present, and not a quarterback to add to the Seahawks that gives them the best chance to win a Super Bowl this year, who would it be?
Past or present? Any Seahawk or anyone in the league?
One player, past or present, not a QB. It does not say a past Seahawks player.
Steve Hutchinson.
So you are going back to a Seahawks player.
Yeah, Steve Hutchinson. If you put a Hall of Fame left guard on this team, I would be super stoked.
Interesting. I mean, I'm gonna go probably a different direction. I think Aaron Donald.
Yeah, it's probably a better answer. But Reggie White.
Yeah. Obviously Walter Jones is up there.
Like Julius Peppers.
Anthony Munoz would be up there.
Just like I was just trying to think of like where they're weakest and like what could really help them.
Yeah. Lawrence Taylor.
Yeah.
I would put Lawrence Taylor outside of Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy. That would be fun.
Yeah. Even Micah Parsons would be pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh man. Lawrence Taylor was.
Oh man.
He was so fun to watch, man. It's very rare to have a pass rusher that is just worth watching his games for. It's like watching a Barry Sanders. Like you tune in to watch a team just because of that guy.
All right, let's agree. We're agreeing on Lawrence Taylor. Let's go with that one.
Those are all would be fun to add. Good question. So Jason asks, has anyone done a deep dive into the new kickoff rules? I understand teams are looking to use a non-kicker for kickoffs to also block and tackle. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this a little bit. Jay Harbaugh, I would recommend if you did not listen to Jay Harbaugh do his press conference, and he's only done one, find that on YouTube and listen to it. It was a really, really smart interview, a lot of good insights from Jay Harbaugh. And there are teams, he talked about, there are teams that are trying to essentially game it by having a non-kicker do the kicking, because the expectation is the kickers are going to have to be more involved with the coverage than they were previously. And they don't want to expose their kickers to that. And they also want to have a better chance of a tackle happening. Jay Harbaugh is not currently planning to do something like that because he thinks people are underestimating how hard it's going to be to actually land the ball in the landing zones, the kickoff zones, on a repeatable basis. But we'll see. Yeah, I don't know. The people are talking about squib kicking it. Like there's all sorts of stuff going on, and that the people are going to find out. And I don't think we're going to really know. I think every single week, people are going to be watching a lot of film of what everyone else is doing, and it's going to be kind of cool. It's the first time in my lifetime that there's really been, quote, a new play in the NFL. All right. Jen Maz says, does Kobe Bryant get cut? If not, what is the most likely position he plays? Have you done a 53-man roster yet, Jeff?
No, I haven't, but I kind of think he is going to get cut. But I think if he makes the team, it's probably as a backup safety. Like, who would be the fourth safety? I guess Jarek Reed. Is Jarek Reed going to start the year on?
He will start. My current roster projection has Jarek Reed starting on PUP.
So then Brian is probably his fourth safety.
Yeah. So here's the guys that I have competing for fourth safety. Jonathan Sutherland, Kobe Bryant, and Ty Okada.
Yeah.
Assuming Jarek Reed is on PUP. I've got Julian Love, Rayshawn Jenkins, and Kayvon Wallace as locks.
Yeah.
So, and I do only at this point, I only have 4 safeties making it. So I personally, right now, I have Jonathan Sutherland over Kobe Bryant. I think he's a better special teams player. I think he's potentially a better safety, but we'll find out. I have Kobe Bryant right after him. I think Ty Okada is not a guy to sleep on either. I think he's a pretty good player. So it doesn't sound right when I say it out loud that Kobe Bryant won't make this team, because I think the front office is invested in him. But I have a feeling Jonathan Sutherland's going to beat him out. That's just my gut.
I don't think you're wrong. It's just Bryant's sort of a tweener and doesn't really have a great skill set right now. And he kind of looked out of place at safety, but I know the team transitioned him there. Nickel, he just wasn't quick enough to play nickel. And he was more of like a technician outside corner. Safety might be a better spot for his skill set, but he's going to have to beat out Sutherland, who I know the last coaching staff really liked him last year in camp. So he's got to battle for that fourth safety spot. That job, his career in Seattle is really on the line here.
Yeah. He's a really interesting player. I get the feeling the coaching staff doesn't quite know what to do with him yet. And so I'm not as convinced that he is safe going into this camp. So
it's true. He's gotten zero buzz.
No, and when coaches have been asked about him, whether it's Aiden Dirty or Mike McDonald, they've kind of just had these blank stares, like, "Wait, who are you asking me about? Why are you asking about that guy?" So those are all of our Patreon questions. Thank you to all the folks. Patreon.com/hawkblogger. Great questions this week, and happy to go through those. Do it each and every week. Although next week I am going to be out, so I don't think I think we're going to take a 1 week break from Real Hawk Talk next week. So we will do questions once I get back. Jeff, can we do a pretty quick, better or worse about the linebacker room?
Yeah, sure.
Can we do that?
Yeah, sure. Let's do
it. Because I've done better or worse so far for, I think I've done it for the safety room. I think I've done it for the defensive line. I think I have done it for what are the other groups I've done it? I've done it for wide receiver. I've done it for wide receiver, but I have not yet had any room come up worse. So I've done wide receiver, defensive line, safeties. You and I did offensive line as well. So we've done 4 groups so far. All of them have come out better. So when we get to linebacker, I know you have a take here. I want you to start. We're going to both do this. I want you to start by making the case that the linebacker room is going to be better than it was last year.
So the thing that they really struggled with was Bobby Wagner was really picked on in coverage last year. And Bobby, for all the good things he did for leadership, and he helped sort out a lot of the run defense issues early. When they played against certain teams, Bobby was just like picked on by like the McVays and the Shanahans. They were almost toying with him. And nothing against Bobby. He's an older player. Linebackers become a tough position. And Jordan Brooks was coming off a torn ACL late in the year. And that's why they signed Devin Bush. And Devin Bush, which we all thought was kind of like the insurance policy, he looked awful. So the big thing me and you wanted was kind of to get flyers and younger upside players who can really excel in coverage. And based on Jerome Baker's career and Tyrell Dodson's flashing last year, the starting group, if they can actually get on the field, fits McDonald a lot better than what just having Bobby alone exposed them to. And obviously a lot of the questions are the health of these guys. But the case of being better is really having the 2-for-1 kind of trade for Brooks, who Brooks showed some good things in coverage last year. He's better than he gets graded by some of the grading sites. And one of his best skills is that he can run with some like slot receivers, but not having Bobby Wagner in coverage. And this pains me to say it. Bobby's probably my favorite Seahawk defender other than from we've ever seen. He's one of my favorite players ever. He's the consummate pro, like the ultimate teammate. He was a liability last year, and it got picked on by better teams. And not having him, I think they're younger, they're faster, they're better in coverage. So I think that's the case. But it's not an easy case to make.
All right. I think I can go farther than that. I think I
Yeah.
can go farther than that. I think that's a good start. I would say you've gotten younger. Overall, Tyrell Dodson's 26. Jerome Baker is what, 27?
Yeah.
Yep. And you're moving on from Bobby Wagner, who's as great as he is on the older side. You've gotten more athletic overall, for sure. You have added, now this is the more controversial thing, Jeff. Jerome Baker has made more plays than Jordan Brooks has over the last few years. Like, that's not something that I think a lot of people understand. And I'm trying to pull up, I did a tweet about this. Baker impact plays.
Is there a stat on this?
Yeah, so I'll show you. I'll share my screen so you can see what I am seeing. Here you go. So this is the last 4 seasons. And I did what I call impact plays: tackles for losses, pass breakups, sacks, interceptions, forced fumbles, and then totaled those plays over 4 years. And Jerome Baker,
look who's complaining to you.
I know. This is Griff and I have gone back and forth on this, but Baker, it was like the only place that Brooks had more was in passes defensed, and it's only by 2. And Baker had 2 more interceptions than Brooks. So as much as like Griff loves that Jordan Brooks can cover the seam, that he can cover plays that linebackers typically can't, that he can robot or whatever Griff talks about, all these things. I will tell you, as a less sophisticated fan who's just looking for, watched over my years of watching football, the players that make plays that turn the tide of a game are more valuable to me, significantly more valuable to me, than players who do a lot of things right, but don't ever fire their gun to where they make the big play that turns a game around. And where this really showed up for me, Jeff, and where I understood the market of the NFL differently, is how they value players that score touchdowns differently than players that gain yards.
Yeah.
And if you're a receiver that scores touchdowns, you will get paid more than a player that gets yards. It's just the way of things. And because that's how you win a game. So I really do believe that that Jerome Baker is a bigger playmaker than Jordan Brooks, and that we have some local bias from beloved bloggers about Jordan Brooks that honestly, I'm not sure. If you look at any ranking on any free agent site, like Jerome Baker and Jordan Brooks were kind of 6 to 1, half dozen the other. It was not this massive divide that's been made out to be.
Yeah, and to my eye, the thing that drove me not drove me crazy about Brooks, but the thing that kind of, when we talked about free agent decisions, he just didn't make impact plays. And the numbers tell a story for sure, but like not only just sacks or TFLs, linebacker is a position I don't think you need to be a film guru to evaluate. Sure, the coverage, but I think you can watch for the most part. Like when you saw Lofa Tatupu play the first year, you can tell right away this guy is around the ball. He's a playmaker. Bobby Wagner, KJ's first game, he's playing inside linebacker. You can just see like this guy who can read screens. He would blow up plays that were dead. KJ Wright was a perfect example where the film guys loved them, but like Any guy could watch KJ Wright and be like, this guy's pretty good. Jordan Brooks didn't make plays like that. A lot of the stuff he did was stuff you have to really go onto the film and see. And if you have to kind of dig that deep to show that this guy's good, I see limitations there. And I'm with you on that one. And just like those same guys thought Cody Barton was good because they were in the responsibility. Cody Barton was fucking shit. And he was terrible. And the league has showed the same Washington, the same reaction we did with their fans. And he's now on a team like on a league minimum contract. And I think to be a good linebacker, you have to make splash plays. You have to. And I haven't dug into Jerome Baker as much as you have. And I know from Miami, he's been more of a finesse player than like a tough physical player. But when he's healthy, he can make splash plays. And I think that will make a difference, at least just visually and just at least to the casual fan. I think that's a really important thing for, like, think of all the best linebackers, maybe not now, a linebacker. I sent this around the other day, actually, by the way, when we were talking about this. Man, the linebacker groups in the league are kind of barren. Like, I saw Mike Clay they ranked Seattle weirdly high. Like, they had Seattle over Roquan Smith.
Yeah,
Baltimore.
That was a little weird.
That was weird. But I think he had the same read as you did. Like, these guys are solid in a position group that doesn't have a lot of solid players right now. And Brooks, to me, was a guy you don't pay. He was in that Shaq Griffin mold of a player.
Mm-hmm.
And look what's happened to Shaq Griffin since leaving Seattle, right?
Yeah, well, and I know everyone likes to joke about PFF, and that's fine. I for me, it's always just another bit of information to throw in there. For just last year, just looking at coverage grades for linebackers, the Seahawks now have the 3rd ranked coverage linebacker from last year and the 18th ranked coverage linebacker from last year, who was tied, by the way, with Patrick Queen. Their next highest, like of the guys that were on Seattle last year, they ranked 49th and 50th. That's where Jordan Brooks and Bobby Wagner ranked in coverage. And even if, I mean, Griff has said Tyrell Dodson was asked to do really simplistic things in coverage. Even if that's the case, if he's scoring 88 grades on coverage, I'm for it, man. Like they've found something in this league that he can cover really well. Fantastic. That gives Mike McDonald clarity about how to utilize this guy. So I think there's a really strong case to be made that this will be a better coverage group, a more athletic group, and a group that makes more impact plays overall than the group last year. So that would be my case that they're better. Now we got to switch sides. We got to make the.
Let me make one more.
Yes.
I had this weird, like, contrarian thought in my head that Tyrese Knight might be good.
Okay. Yes. That's a good one to bring up. Say more.
One, I like to be a contrarian a little bit. Like, everyone just wrote this guy up. Like, he was seemingly overdrafted by 2 rounds. But the reports on him in practice have been kind of interesting. I think the fact that he's making interceptions on like zone drops where he's fooling the quarterback this early, I think there might be something there. And reading that John Boyle story, and no, I think it was, who was it? No, it was Brady. Sorry. Brady wrote a story about their draft, and I sent you the screenshot. No one had reported this other way, that the GMs weren't as high on Knight as the coaches were. And Mike McDonald identified Knight from the visit as someone they really wanted to coach. And Mike is supposed to be this linebacker guru. They seem pretty lukewarm on him after the draft press conference. And seeing that from Brady after the fact, maybe there's something there that we're all missing. And there's been picks sometimes. Like I remember when they drafted Lofa and Leroy Hill, they're like, yeah, these guys. And they look pretty good. So as your 3rd or 4th linebacker, that over Devin Bush, who was a guy that you turned out to be completely right on. You're like, I don't know, what are they doing there? I was kind of high on the idea of taking a flyer on him. He was awful. He looks so small and stiff, and if I don't know if Knight will end up being good, especially year one. I was joking with you guys the other day, like by October he's going to run the wrong way. I'm going to complain for hours.
Uh-huh.
I just have this weird thought in the back of my mind he might be good.
That thought has been growing in my mind as well.
Yeah.
There are the signs are interesting. Not to take a total segue, but I feel like the signs are the opposite on the young corners. I didn't hear a single thing about Nehemiah Pritchett or DJ James. So I'm like, I'm going to be paying attention and waiting to hear something about
Stephon
those
Gilmore,
guys.
best free agent.
Yeah. Well, so all right. So let's flip sides. Let's now make the case that they're going to be worse. Maybe I'll go first. I think the case that they will be worse is that Tyrell Dodson has never started a full year. This is a massively small sample size. He was asked to do something very narrow. He was an undrafted free agent, essentially seen as a guy that can be a run stuffer, but not really someone who's talented in coverage, despite the fact that PFF says otherwise. Jerome Baker, has kind of declined, has not been the same player. Maybe it wasn't the fact that Vic Fangio was misusing him. Maybe it was that he is declining. He's also coming off some injuries, and we're seeing maybe he will never come back from Greece. He seems to really like it over there in Greece, he says, but you could really end up missing the certainty that you had with Brooks and with Wagner. Like, those are two guys, whatever you think about them, you were pretty sure you knew what you're going to get from them each and every game. I don't know if you know that with this group. And so this could just be an overall less talented group, even if they are younger. And they could be the weakness of the defense potentially. And it's a very thin spot. If Tyrese Knight is not the player that we are hoping he is, they don't have any options. There's not like a young player underneath them that you're just hoping is ready to ascend like you are in some of these other spots. So that would be my case that they are worse. What would be your case that they're worse?
Yeah, I think the floor is significantly lower.
Yeah.
I think the floor, okay, case number one, Patrick O'Connell and John Radigan are currently the number one defense in camp. I was joking with you last week that Mike McDonald shut down practice early so they didn't have to watch his linebackers anymore. So you liked that one last time too. So the floor of the whole group is really low. The ceiling, there is a ceiling there for sure. And we covered it low, but okay, let's start with the obvious. Both these guys are injured right now. They're running a new defense. They weren't able to take a single snap on the field, and they're both. Jerome Baker had a lot of injuries last year. That they couldn't cut him because of production. They cut him because of injuries, and the injuries they couldn't rely on him to live up to the contract he was due for. So injuries were an issue. Dodson's had like a 6-game sample where you covered it perfectly there, where he was like a special teams only player that apparently Dan Morgan was really high on and was kind of bragging to Schneider that he was in Buffalo when they signed him and was kind of bragging to Schneider. Apparently Schneider talked about this, that Dan Morgan was bragging about that, like that was his guy. And Carolina didn't target him as a free agent, or at least we didn't know, but Seattle did. And listen, they're betting on a small sample, which is always a very dangerous thing. You don't know if it was a fluke. You don't know if he's being asked to do things, and he had a really good defense around him. But Leslie Frazier was around him, so they would know him infinitely well. But I think that just the fact is there is no certainty there. We don't know. Jerome Baker, like if he plays, there's a level of certainty with his play, but we don't know what his lower leg injuries are going to be like. Dodson could be a total whiff. And if those guys, if one of them doesn't work, one of Radigan or Knight or O'Connell has to play. They don't really have the insurance policy, which is scary enough. That's why we both love Junior Colson this draft. And we don't really have, like, Dodson's never really played a Mike in a defense. Like, to have guys who aren't practicing a defense this complicated, it's a lot to put on these guys. So it has the potential to be like a complete problem spot. The floor. The simple thing is the floor is really low.
I think you nailed it right out of the gates there. I mean, I look at it, Jeff. I look at even 2022. Jerome Baker was the 13th graded linebacker in the whole league. I mean,
Good player.
he was above David Long. He was above Nick Bolton. He was above Frankie Louvu. He was above Matt Milano, above Bobby Okereke. Like, there's a good linebackers. This was in 2022. He had a 78 grade, and he was the second ranked pass rushing linebacker. He was up there in coverage. I mean, he was a great all around player. And I don't know, man. As we get down to it, so now we have to answer the question: is the linebacker room better or worse? This is a tougher one for me than I thought it would be.
Yeah.
I think we have to assume that these guys are going to play, because otherwise it gets too complicated with the injury situation. So I'm going to set aside health. I think it's a little worse. I guess that's where I end up. But like, I want to say that they're neck and neck, but that's not fun. No one wants to hear that they're even. I think there's going to be aspects of the linebacker position where they are meaningfully better than what we had last year. But overall, I think maybe they're a little bit worse. What's your thought?
Yeah, I think they're worse. And I do like what they ultimately did with the 2-for-1 switch. And we were both advocating they should sign 2 veteran linebackers or 2. The draft kind of got away from them. So I think the Knight thing has such a big, if they had gotten a linebacker that we were all comfortable with as a third linebacker, as the guy, if one of them can't play, he slides in to start, I'd feel pretty good about the linebacker group. But Knight is a wild card. He's a project kind of player. And the depth is what really makes me uncomfortable. And last year, like, really, there wasn't much better. It was Devin Bush. And when Devin Bush had to play, I think it was the last 2 games of the year, he was atrocious in that Steelers game. And Arizona, he didn't look much better. So that was like the insurance policy. And they're still like an insurance policy away. But I just think the certainty that you had with Bobby and Brooks, I think you have to say it's a little worse because you have almost no certainty now.
Mm-hmm.
But Knight can swing that, or if Dotson hits. But like Jerome Baker, man, like, I just put his name into Twitter, and like I found a play from last year in like the Miami Buffalo game that decided the division, where he makes like a stop right at the goal line, like makes like a crazy tackle. I can send that to you, but we just haven't seen flash plays like that from Jordan Brooks.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think if Baker was healthy, I think I potentially could be swayed the other way. But the lower leg thing makes me a little worried.
I'll tell you this, Jeff. I am going to be the first person out of the gates as soon, like first series, when Jerome Baker makes a play behind the line of scrimmage, Tyrell Dodson breaks up a pass. I'm going to be like, this group's better. I'm like, it'll take the weight of a feather to push me over to the other side on this one.
Okay, I just shared you the play I'm talking about. You can show the vid. I don't know if you can show it. I put it in the private chat.
Okay, let me check it out.
This is gonna fire you up.
I know I can't share this because it's broadcast.
Highlight. Damn.
But yeah, I mean, he's a damn good player. So I'm going to be quick to come to their defense.
Oh my God!
Once the season starts. But at this point, I think it's just way too homerish to say that this group is better, and especially considering so far every single position group we've said is better. So got to show some objectivity somewhere. I think this is the right place to start. So, all right, Jeff, I think that's it for tonight, man. As always, great to chop it up with you and catch up. We will miss you next week. We'll miss me next week. We'll miss the show next week, but looking forward to getting back the week after. What will that be? What day will that be? It will be it'll be July 3rd. So right before the 4th of July, we will do a show, and at that point we'll be only 2 weeks away from the opening of training camp with the rookies. So just about anything can happen at that point. All right, everybody. If you haven't already, please give Jeff a follow at Real Jeff Simmons. You can find me at Hawk Blogger on either Instagram or on Twitter. And for now, I want to thank everybody who has joined the show tonight, who has signed up as a Patreon member or a YouTube member or both. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you to Detail Oriented, who's leading the charge there. Give the show a like and click subscribe. It only takes a second. Really appreciate it. It helps people find what we're doing and grows the community. And would love to have more and more people join up as we get through these dog days. I will see everybody tomorrow morning for my last live edition of Hawk Blogger Mornings, which, funny enough, Jeff, I'm just realizing now, no one's caught this, but I've had the wrong brand for this entire episode. We should have had our Real Hawk Talk branding, but we had our Hawk Blogger Mornings branding because, you know what? Everybody makes mistakes, dude. And I did for a good hour today. But I will be there tomorrow morning. We'll cover some more stuff before I head out on my trip. So until next time, take care, everybody. This has been another episode of Real Hawk Talk.